Good afternoon, everyone. My gratitude extends to each of you who's joined us today at the Forum of Energy Efficiency and Decarbonization, also commonly abbreviated as FEED 2022, that's been organized by Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. This year's event is going to focus on decarbonizing India's economy. Before we start with the day one of the event, there are a few very quick technical details I'd like to go over. So, firstly, please be watchful. The entire session is getting recorded. Secondly, you'll have the opportunity to keep submitting your questions in the question box that you all will see on the right side of your screen. So, during the end of each session, we'll collect these questions and try to answer as many as we can. Over today and tomorrow, we have multiple informative sessions planned out for each one of you here. Each session is going to display a lot of deliberations and discussions, all of which are going to help us in shaping India's energy efficiency landscape. By the end of tomorrow, we're going to be a step closer to the set outcomes of this entire event. Firstly, we're going to lay down some groundwork for potential policy changes and shifts in the Indian energy landscape. Secondly, we'll also try to forge partnerships to trap and drive new business opportunities. And thirdly, we look forward to meeting new partners and members who can help AEEE in furthering its vision and mission. So without much ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Satish Kumar, Executive Director and President AEEE. He's also been amongst one of the conveners at the steering committee for FEED. So over to you. Kindly introduce our first speaker for the day.
Sir, can people hear me? Can somebody confirm if people? Okay, all right.
Yes.
So thank you, Afsa, for providing an overview and context for the Forum on Energy Efficiency and Decarbonization. I am delighted to welcome you all to the Forum on Energy Efficiency and Decarbonization 2022 iteration. This year's event focuses on decarbonizing India's economy through sectoral collaboration and cooperation, with particular focus on the construction sector, power sector, transportation sector, and digitalization of energy systems, along with sustainable cooling solutions. It is my privilege to thank our sponsors. First, platinum sponsor Danfoss, gold sponsor Tabreed, silver sponsor Senguba and Smart Jewels for helping us make this event a successful one. I would now like to welcome Mr. Chirag Bajal, Chairperson, Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. Chirag is also the Managing Director at Carrier. In his role, he is responsible for promoting air conditioning business with brands like Carrier, Toshiba Air Conditioning for India region, including Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal. He is a management graduate with major in finance and marketing. Over to you, Chirag, for your views and the role and importance of energy efficiency and decarbonization.
Namaskar. Thank you very much, Satish, and welcome everyone. Even before I get into sharing some content with the people who have joined in, it's important that I thank everyone who is currently attending the inaugural session of FEED. And the reasons is what I wanted to first talk about. So if you look at energy as a resource and start looking at it at a country or a global level, it is about energy security and energy as being important for the development of any country while getting the geopolitical power or the heft across the world. Some of the examples in front of us have been whether it was the Middle East for so many years on fossil fuel dependency, or the finding and the development of the shale gas, let's say in the US. and then slowly looking at how India as a country will need to first recognize the importance of where we are, and then working towards step by step in making the India that we would like to hand over to our future generations, and having a feeling of fulfillment while doing so. Now, when I say this, I'll give you the example of a couple of developed countries where we've seen the building stock which has been in existence for the last about 50 years or so. And some of the buildings, for instance, are white elephants. They are sometimes impossible to retrofit or prohibitively expensive if we were to go and do them now. Now, fast forward from here for the next 20 years of India, we all recognize that India will urbanize, and India's urbanization rate may differ. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of how fast will India urbanize. And in that urbanization, people who are attending this and the ones who will then carry it forward as a message, we all have a responsibility towards making this happen. And in a manner that we can harness the best today, but also keeping an eye on the future. The third piece, which I want to keep in front of us, is technology. Now, technology is actually a great leveler. It cuts across all sectors, demand and supply, whether it's in data analytics, real time, optimum decision making, funding, finance availability. So there is a whole lot that we're going to see technology unfold, and what we are currently witnessing is just the tip of the iceberg. So I'll now share some of the slides with all of you and give you a brief about this. May I request the slideshow, please? Can somebody help me with the slides? Just give me a moment, please. Try and get it. All right. So by the time we get the slides back up online, let me give you. So I have a message of a technology glitch. Let me just see if I can get my slides up quickly. Please bear with me for a minute. Okay, by the time the slides are loading up online to the cloud, Well, that's what is one of the technologies that we'll talk about. So let me just quickly share with you about AEEE in the meanwhile, that I can start sharing back these slides with you. So AEEE has established itself as a leading organization in India, which promotes energy efficiency as a resource. Now, with a strong foundation that is rooted in energy efficiency, AEEE is proactively evolving into a leading force for holistic and integrated strategies. Now, this is to address our most complex challenges, which is at the nexus of energy and climate change. AEEE aims to be a dynamic contributor in India's transition to a climate resilient and energy secure future, and make India one of the most attractive markets for the best available technologies that will support this transition. So it's not just that, it's about creating a market transformation as well, and we'll get to see some of that work that AEEE is working on. Now, climate change has been often cited, used, referred, uh, as it affects everything from geopolitics to economics to migration, livelihoods, businesses, and our policies to come. It will shape our cities, it affects our life expectancies, it's linked with pollution, it impacts what we grow and eat and how warm or cool we feel, whether it's a comfort for the larger sections of a society or not, and pretty much affects and impacts everything that we have in our country. So it's our great pleasure at AEEE and is to the Secretariat and to propagate our joint vision of creating a better future for our society and community to ensure an energy efficient and a sufficient nation. India has been at the forefront of implementing energy efficiency and renewable energy measures and proving to be a leader in enabling clean energy access across the globe. Now, to propel the same, AEEE commits to support the Government of India's commitments and issue a call for action. So, after FEED 2022, along with our member companies to our fellow business communities, to work together and to help the government deliver 100 gigawatt from energy efficiency by 2030 with the help of policies, technologies, financing investments, and technology transfer. And I'll quickly check if we have the slides for all of you. All right. So the Forum for Energy Efficiency and Decarbonization, in short, FEED, is what we will engage with in the next 1.5 days. And it's to bring together the people who will have a thought, a perspective, an opinion, industry experts in different fields. This is to build a dialogue. And this dialogue building is what will help us in some of the outcomes. But the dialogues are going to be centered around some 5 key sectors between construction, power, transport, energy system, and digital, and then making sure that buildings or sustainable cooling solutions become a part of that as well. I wanted for us to have a look at this graph, which is how the energy intensity and the CO2 emissions look like for India and the world. Now, it's interesting to see that while India actually has become much better in the last about 30 years in its energy intensity and paying less and becoming more optimum in the way we use energy to translate into GDP, but at the same time, not just with our growth of population, but also the imperative for a country to develop, our carbon emissions are going up. Now, while there has been a lot of debate about that the developed countries have already done this in the past, and now how unfair it may be to really ask the developing countries to cut down their emissions, we believe that both are possible. There is a symbiotic relationship in the way that we can look at our country's GDP and economic growth, having better quality of life across different sections of our society, and at the same time growing our carbon emissions, but not at the same rate. So this is one of the aspects which we will see uh, us play out in the next 1.5 days. Now, this is, as I mentioned, The segments and sectors that the dialogue will intersperse in the next 1.5 days essentially is going to lead towards three outcomes that I would encourage the AEEE Secretariat to be able to then work with. The first one that we're looking at is laying down how this may impact the policy framework and for our ability to work with the government and give our research, our data initiatives, or for the government to look at doing it on their own and working through some of those policy changes for the future. This next 1 day can also help us forge new partnerships, and partnerships will drive new business opportunities, whether it is on technology or it is in the go to market. The third one is about advocacy. The more we build awareness around this subject, the better it gets across the country for all of us. And like I mentioned, it is not about any capitalist company or about a not for profit like AEEE. It is essentially about our future. And if we were to urbanize fast, which I mentioned, this is going to be an important key that we keep talking about this. A quick look at the verticals at AEEE that we work with. And while there are 5 different verticals cutting across the themes which have a mission for AEEE, the building and communities, for example, is one where we had a seminal moment when some of the work that we've been doing at AEEE really resulted in one of its kind document in India Cooling Action Plan. I would encourage, if not, we already would like for you to download that and go through it, because it's for the first time that cohesive, collaborative work for the India for the next 20 years has been developed, and how the interventions must be taken up right now for India, so that when we are witnessing our surge in the cooling demand, and let me give you an example. If we have a cooling demand which is at 100 right now, we are looking at the overall aggregate cooling demand going up by 8 times in the next 20 years. And if I look at it only for buildings and communities, it's expected to go up by about 12 times. Now, that is something that we can change. We can have the growth in India, even if it's a CAGR of the next of GDP growth of 7% for the next 10 to 20 years. It is not necessary that our aggregate cooling demand must grow by about 12 times and make us the country which we do not want to be. Similarly, if we look at some of the work done in state and local action, so as a cooperative, to encourage the cooperation and the federalism that India is built on as a constitution, it is equally important that we recognize the roles that state governments play. So the State Efficiency Energy Index is one document which has been now in its second edition. And it's amazing to see how the state governments are warming up to understand the idea of not just the energy intensity, but their ability to create micro level energy efficiency or sustainability cells to work with, to look after their capital expense, to look after their policy framework, and to be able to impact some of this. While not all states currently are at the same level, but it is heartening to see that this is what India is all about. So everything cannot be done at the central level. So AEEE essentially looks at while we create a platform, and the platform then becomes our way, our mouthpiece, our ability to go and talk about policy change or to create a new ecosystem or a market. It is also about the knowledge base that India so needs right now. There is in many sectors lack of credible data, and data-based policy making or business investments is going to become the key for us for the future. So these are the areas which we will see play out in one way or the other as we enter feed for the next 1 day. Now, this is what Satish was also alluding to, because if we look at AEE's approach, it's actually for accelerating this transition, but with the three sector leadership. So, of course, one is going to be the government, which plays an important role in overall policy making. The second one is a unique, one of its kind industry partnership where the members of AEEE, or it's a society that is actually of all the industry as members, and we are able to do this amongst different segments of industry as a body. And the third one, which we are trying to also impact through feed, is civil society and organizations at large. Now, this is an area where I would really encourage all of us to go back and take this message of energy efficiency to the rest of the country. Some of the work, as I mentioned, and I would really encourage people to look at AEE's work more in detail, some of which I mentioned, like ICAP or State Energy Efficiency Index. But there's a lot more which is happening. For example, the recently concluded Global Cooling Prize in the innovation global competition for creating a disruptive technology in building communities vertical. Solar Decathlon, again, attempting to change the narrative from the design perspective, crowdsourcing ideas, inviting the young minds of the country or across the world, frankly, now, to be able to come and change the impact of cooling and building communities through that. And AEEE is really at the forefront in driving some of these areas. With this, I would like to thank again people who have joined in for feed. This is, I look forward to the outcomes. I look forward to the dialogue and engagement, because this is going to also give some very good lead indicators of how we are expecting this think tank, the group of people who are working with us, not just at AEEE, but everyone who's coming and joining us, in giving us valuable input and feedback. What I will want to do is also introduce our next speaker. And it is really a privilege to be able to introduce Brian. Brian Motherway is head of the Energy Efficiency Division at the International Energy Agency, overseeing a range of analytical and outreach programs supporting energy efficiency globally. Prior to joining the IEA, Brian was chief executive of the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. Brian holds bachelor's and master's degrees in engineering and a PhD in sociology. This is a great honor, Brian, to have you amongst us, and a privilege to introduce you. I will hand over this now to you for your keynote session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chirag. It's a pleasure to see you and Satish and all my friends in India. And I'm certainly regretting that I can't be with you live today, but I'm joining you from a grey morning in Paris. And I'm very pleased and honored to be able to give this address to you today. So thank you very much. And Chirag, I must say, in your opening remarks, you set the stage very well in terms of the importance of energy efficiency, and particularly your emphasis on the role of leadership in driving it forward, which is something that we very much believe as well. So in a few minutes, I would just like to tell you a little bit about some of the global trends that are going on in energy efficiency, which I hope will set the context for your discussions at this very important conference, and also make a few points that I think are important strategic dimensions that we need to continue to focus on. So I also want to mention, of course, that you can find me on Twitter at Brian or Motherway. I'd love to engage with you, hear your opinions on these issues as we stay close to the great work that's going on in India and in the region on this important topic. So let me start with, I think, is probably the most important point, which is that even though we talk about progress in energy efficiency, we talk about an acceleration of many global commitments to net zero. It's very welcome to see this focus on accelerating decarbonisation. But right now, today, we are not on that path. In fact, in 2021, we saw one of the biggest single year increases in CO2 emissions from the energy sector that we've ever recorded. So right now, our emissions pathway globally is going in exactly the wrong direction. We saw a dip in 2020 for all the wrong reasons, because of the damage and the tragedies that we saw, the dysfunction of our economies and of our lifestyles, that's not how to get emissions down. We need to really address how we can get the world back on a positive downward path on global emissions in ways that actually protect people's well-being, protects economic growth and people's quality of life. And of course, that's where energy efficiency comes in. Now, in 2021, we saw that the progress, as measured by energy intensity, annual progress in energy efficiency recovered a bit. So each year around the world, we become a little bit better at extracting more value from the energy that we all use. Usually it's a couple of percent. In 2020, it was lower for understandable reasons, but we did see a certain recovery in 2021. You could take that as partially good news that we saw some recovery, but I need to stress that in IEA's analysis of what's required for net zero, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on, we actually need to double that rate, and we need to do so quickly. So we're still a very far distance from what energy efficiency can do and needs to do if we're really to exploit it to the full value, to allow people greater access to affordable energy, to allow people to create employment, improve their quality of lives, but also at the same time reduce our global emissions from the energy sector. And energy efficiency can do this. If we just look at the next decade, we can imagine a world where GDP has grown by 2030 by more than 40%, and yet total energy demand has actually gone down. This is achievable through a strong and determined focus on energy efficiency in all sectors. We could actually see, despite massive growth in buildings and transport, we could see total energy use going down. We expect that industrial energy use will still grow by a little bit, but far less than it needs to if we do so inefficiently. We do, of course, see growth in the electricity sector because we see a lot of solutions, be it in transport, heat, or other parts of the energy system where electrification can be part of decarbonisation. But overall, energy efficiency can really make a huge contribution to improving people's lives through energy, but at the same time, curtailing energy demand growth and hence curtailing emissions growth. India is no exception to this. This is really a crucial decade for the world and including for India, which is such a fast-growing economy. India is going to build a lot of buildings. It's going to build a lot of infrastructure. It's going to create a lot of new employment through industrial sectors. All of this will lock in either efficient assets or inefficient assets. And that's why this decade is really crucial. Energy efficiency is not only a major chunk of the decarbonisation pathway, but it is also the enabler of so many of the other aspects because it makes energy systems smaller than they need to be. It reduces investment costs, it reduces energy costs to citizens and consumers, and it makes other measures on the supply side in particular more affordable and less daunting. So energy efficiency is the start of all journeys towards net zero energy systems globally, whether that's here in France, in Europe, whether it's in India, whether it's any part of the world. We still always stress that energy efficiency comes first and needs to remain so. In that context, I want to share with you just my personal views on what are the three mega trends that are really going to drive energy efficiency this decade and beyond. And all of these, of course, have very important implications for India. And in all cases, India is showing great leadership in many of these areas. And I do want to stress, talking to such a knowledgeable audience as I am doing today, that India is recognized globally for its great leadership on many aspects of energy efficiency, including, of course, in lighting, in buildings, in industry, and many exemplar policies that are literally world famous for the impacts they're having and will continue to have. I also want to commend the government for the excellent union budget just published today, which has many clean energy measures. And of course, it's very gratifying to see some energy efficiency measures in there, including programs for retrofit of commercial buildings and many other aspects that will allow people to benefit from energy, but in a more efficient, more affordable, and more sustainable way. Now, in that context, in the next decade, I think three things are really going to transform the landscape for energy efficiency, be it in policy circles, in government, in people's lives, and of course in businesses and in industry. The first is the context of net zero. Now, I want to stress that every part of the world, every government is preparing and considering and deciding its own pathway towards net zero emissions. Of course, we very much welcome recent announcements by India, by Prime Minister Modi and others about India's ambition for net zero. And it's great to see that, including the early landmarks set for 2030, which I think are so crucial. We see many countries around the world setting targets for net zero in different timeframes. To support an understanding of what that is going to mean, we have modeled a scenario of a global net zero energy system for 2050. It'll be different in different parts of the world. Every country will decide its own measures, but this pathway gives you a sense of the kind of changes that society is embracing when it starts on a journey towards net zero. And it really stresses two things. First of all, no pathway to net zero is conceivable really without a strong lead from energy efficiency, because as I've said already, it's a major chunk of emissions reduction, but it also makes everything else more affordable and more feasible. And energy efficiency is particularly important in the second key point about net zero pathways, which is the crucial importance of this decade. We are in this decade. It's 2022. We are not talking about future decades. We're not talking about future generations. We're talking about here and now, in the decade we are already in, and the importance of early, determined, strong, scaled up action in all sectors in energy efficiency, whether it's how we build buildings, whether it's the heating and cooling systems we put in them, whether it's our transport systems, our industry, our energy systems themselves. Mr. Bajal rightly pointed out the importance, for example, of cooling in a country like India, where more people are in a very good way getting access to cooling services and to air conditioning, and that's improving people's lives in so many ways. It does, of course, have very significant energy and climate implications, and energy efficiency can be really crucial to allow that growth to continue in ways that people can live more comfortable lives, but their energy bills are lower than they need to be, the energy system is smaller than it needs to be, and the emissions are much lower than they need to be. So really, in this first decade, a focus on energy efficiency is crucial. The other real implication of a net zero context is it really gives us a whole society focus on these issues that I think we've never really had before. Energy efficiency, for those of us joining today, we love energy efficiency. We understand its benefits. We talk about it at events like this. We get excited about it when we meet each other. It's fair to say that not everybody in society shares our enthusiasm. But in the context of net zero, energy efficiency really gets a much higher political profile, a much higher business strategy focus than it has ever had before. So I really think it's an interesting time for how energy efficiency can be more central to energy policy debates, to enterprise policy debates, to obviously to climate and environment debates, to business strategy discussions, to societal discourse. I think that energy efficiency will finally get its place in the center of how we grow our economies, how we create jobs, how we make people's lives better, but in a sustainable and more affordable and more feasible way. So I think we're entering a very, very interesting phase where energy efficiency will get more of the attention it deserves, and therefore will create more opportunities. Now, of course, energy efficiency has to deliver in that regard. I think sometimes energy efficiency zealots, and I include myself in this, have a tendency to remind other people about how great energy efficiency is, how important it is. But we also have to recognize that it takes a lot of determined, strong action, policy design, policy implementation, action by businesses, action by CEOs, action by individual consumers. And this is not always easy. We need to recognize that energy efficiency involves complex responses from different parts of government at a national, at a state, at a local level, different responses from companies, from manufacturers, from retails. So it's a complicated field. It's not easy to just transform our economies overnight. And that's why putting energy efficiency at the center of discussions about sustainable energy systems, about sustainable development pathways, about net zero energy of the future is so important, because it allows us to generate these stronger whole of government, whole of society responses that energy efficiency needs to really succeed. The second mega trend I want to mention is one that, of course, India is already at the center of, which is digitalization. We see digital technologies transforming our lives in many ways, not least in the energy system. We all have apps on our smartphones that allow us to engage with the buildings we're in terms of control of energy use, in terms of where we work. We engage with public transport systems. We engage with rideshare schemes. We engage with weather apps. We have so much more control over our lives in terms of understanding our energy use needs, understanding our behavior needs, understanding how to be comfortable. In modern homes now, as many of you will know, we have great control to optimize the energy use in the home or in our office, in our school, in our workplace, in a way that is much more efficient in itself in terms of the use of that energy. More comfort, better conditions for less energy cost. At the same time, what's really starting to emerge very quickly now is thinking about not just at the end use level, but at the systems level. how do we think about controlling energy in an optimized and efficient way, not just as we use it, but as we generate it, as we move it around, as we control it at a system level. And we see this already rapidly changing in terms of demand side flexibility that allows better use of clean energy resources such as solar and wind. When they're available, they are clean and they are cheap. And if we can flex demand to make best use of those resources when they're available, maybe control demand when those resources are not available, we can deliver a much more optimized system as a whole. So that requires some change of thinking by all of us in terms of how we use energy, how we use technology, but it also requires changes of thinking in energy policy, market design, and regulation to think about how technology, clever innovators, clever companies are coming up with new apps, new technologies, new sensors, new algorithms that are really empowering much more efficient, much more optimized energy systems. And policy, regulation, and market design has to enable that, while at the same time protecting consumers in terms of cybersecurity, data privacy, data ownership, and other measures. So it's a real moment now, I think, in energy thinking to look at how digitalization can bring many benefits to citizens and to the net zero pathway. And of course, that connection with people brings me to the third megatrend, which is a very welcome and, in my view, overdue focus on people at the center of clean energy transitions. Last year, our executive director, Dr. Fatih Birol, convened the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions. We brought together leading thinkers, ministers, heads of state, heads of think tanks, leading labor representatives, civil society representatives, to come together and share wisdom and share best practice on how we can really make sure that clean energy transitions are truly people-centered and truly inclusive. After all, sometimes in these discussions, we tend to focus on technology, we focus on price, we focus on policy instruments. We should never forget that all clean energy transitions are for people and about people, and we need to make sure that people are at the center. And in the work of the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions, they identified 4 key themes where they made action-oriented recommendations for how governments and societies can make sure that their clean energy transitions are truly people-centered and inclusive. And those policies, first of all, of course, rightly centered on jobs. How do we make sure that clean energy transitions create good quality jobs for the maximum number of people, while also supporting communities and individuals who might be negatively impacted by job losses that may occur as energy systems change, as energy sources change. Secondly, we need to make sure that clean energy transitions are fully aligned with enhancing social and economic development. Energy is about making people's lives better, creating employment opportunities, creating better levels of comfort, well-being, and health. We need to make sure that everybody has access to those benefits, but in a sustainable, affordable, and environmentally friendly way. Thirdly, good policy design can really ensure that equity, social inclusion, and fairness, gender equality, involvement of marginalized communities can all be greatly enhanced as part of clean energy transitions. And that's really important to make sure that everybody benefits and that there are no unintended consequences that certain sectors of society are somehow disadvantaged by the policies and changes that will come in every society as a result of clean energy transitions. And finally, we need to see people as active participants in transitions, whether it's us in our behavior as energy users, whether it's part of democratic debate, part of shaping the future and the pathways of our societies. People need to be involved. All of these issues are not just right in themselves for making the outcomes better, but I think it's clear that clean energy transitions will fail if they do not maintain the support of populations, of consumers, of citizens, as changes that will inevitably bring both positive and negative impacts on people. They need to be well understood, they need to be well explained, people need to feel ownership and feel positive engagement with these measures. And I think this is really important for energy efficiency, because what makes energy efficiency stand out is it makes people's lives better. Energy efficiency doesn't just reduce energy use and therefore emissions, but it creates jobs, it lowers people's energy bills, it makes homes more comfortable, it makes schools better learning environments, it makes hospitals healthier environments. All of these benefits that energy efficiency can bring directly to all of us as citizens and consumers can be at the forefront of helping people understand the positive pathway that a net zero transition can represent if designed right and with a focus on the benefits for people. So energy efficiency yet again stands out as needing to be at the center, but also at the beginning of our journey towards net zero energy transitions into the future. Before I close, Chair, I just want to mention a couple of the initiatives we're very honoured and pleased to be collaborating with colleagues in India on that I think will come up again in the course of FEED over the next couple of days. First of all, with a focus on jobs, with a focus on social inclusion, our friends and colleagues in the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and in the government have rightly focused on sectors where employment is really important, particularly in more rural communities, particularly among women. And one that stands out, of course, is the textile sector in India, which is a very large employer, a very large generator of economic activity. And it's made up of a very large number of relatively small companies that don't always focus strongly on energy efficiency, don't always have the technical expertise themselves. So we've been pleased to work with our partners in India, including Tripoli, who we thank very much, to look at the energy efficiency opportunities in the textile sector and how a focus on the key aspects of textile industry can really deliver very quick, affordable gains to those companies, making them more competitive, reducing their costs, reducing their environmental impacts. And this work, I think, is actually something that will be of international interest, given India's leadership in showing what a sector like this can do in terms of improving its efficiency. I also want to mention in the appliance sector, and I want to commend India's global leadership as part of the SEED initiative, the Super Energy Efficiency Appliance Deployment Initiative, that we are very pleased to coordinate. And ourselves, along with India and other leading countries, and driven by the United Kingdom in their role as president of COP26, we were very pleased to announce just a few weeks ago at COP in Glasgow the Global Product Efficiency Call to Action, which brings together large economies from around the world to make a commitment to have a stronger focus on energy efficiency in key appliances, namely lighting, motors, air conditioners, and refrigerators, which between them account for almost half of global energy demand. And all of them have major opportunities to become more efficient in this decade, with a strong focus from policymakers, as well as a strong focus from manufacturers who are with us today, retailers, and of course, all of us as consumers. This is a very exciting initiative that really stands ready to be a major driver of energy efficiency progress in the coming years in ways that will actually reduce costs for consumers, make these products more affordable and more accessible, while also reducing energy demand and reducing emissions. These are just a couple of the very exciting initiatives that we're very pleased to be working with India on, and really demonstrate the global thrust and the global focus that is happening right now on energy efficiency. We're very pleased to be working with India on these issues. I'm very pleased, Chair, to be joining you today. I thank you very much for your time, for listening to me, and I wish you well with the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brian. Your thought-provoking comments, and I think the three mega trends on energy efficiency that you've talked about, particularly setting a context for net zero, your focus on digitalization, and also the focus on people. I think you've put it very aptly, and it's very straightforward. I actually sincerely hope that all the other sessions we have coming up are going to be equally informative for us. So very quickly, I'm going to thank all our delegates and our speakers who have come here at FEED today. I'm going to request each of you to please keep posting on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you can keep using our handles that we've created for FEED. Some more information will be provided on the ticker below, so you can see our hashtag FEED 2022 written there. We're now going to quickly break for 15 minutes. So we're at 2:43. Our next session starts at 3 o'clock. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to request all of you to please go to the lobby area, because that is where we are going to now be launching our exhibitions. So you can all go and have a view of all the exhibition areas. At sharp 3 o'clock, we begin with two parallel sessions. One is going to focus on the opportunities and challenges of the carbon pricing market for India. And the second session is going to be around promoting the domestic manufacturing ecosystem for the appliance industry in India. So again, like most of you might have joined this session, you go back to your platform lobby, and through the auditorium, you can join whichever of the two sessions interest you. See you all at 3 p.m. sharp. Thank you.